Hi there, and welcome to the Strategy Room, or the Strategy Room interview series, as we like to call it. I'm your host, Pete Lawson. Today, I'm joined by Bradley Saribekian. Bradley has been with Focal Point for 7 months and is making some great inroads through through a relationship building exercise that he's doing at the moment. And Bradley brings a lot to the table, especially, for those that are starting out. Bradley's got a lot of great ideas for you. For those that have been in business for a while, for things you've forgotten about when you did first start, we're going to bring those to the core as well. Bradley, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you being here today. Would you like to just kick off with a brief background of Bradley Saribekian? Tell us what you've done, who you are, and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Peter, thank you so much for having me here. So for me, I come with 15 years of experience. I've had the privilege of contributing to the growth of some of the largest global organizations, Microsoft, Amazon, Procter & Gamble, and even if you've got any friends in the Canadian sector, Rogers Communications, they're one of Canada's largest telecommunications giants. But
Wow.
as I rose through the corporate ranks, I developed a fondness for a servant leadership style, and I pivoted my outlook from more of a top-down approach that
Mm-hmm.
so many leaders pushed to upskilling my managers, employees, and letting them, basically taking care of them so they can take care of the client. After I finished my MBA, I knew that I could do so much more. So I began my Doctor of Business Administration,
Mm-hmm.
specializing in organizational leadership. The plan was really to finish the DBA and applying what I learned to help that organization, and then make a break for consulting. Um, Time would have it another way, and that plan really got accelerated. And so I started looking for consulting roles. But really, what I found is that there's a parallel to consulting that was much better aligned to my values, and that's coaching. So in consulting, you're charged with giving the answer and giving a deliverable. And while this helps the client in the short term, they don't really learn from the exercise, and they become very dependent on the consultant. But with coaching, at least for me, I found that it's part training, part accountability, part problem solving. And the best part is that you can work with any size organization and help them achieve their goal and allow them to push forward on their own, even when the engagement's done.
Okay. What I want to get back to here is what really inspired you. What was the thing? What was the aha moment? What was the penny dropping moment that inspired you to become a coach? You've told me, you've worked around and said that you'd like to do that, but there's always something that you wake up in the morning and you've just got this thing that's what you want to do.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, it was spending a long time in a corporate field and helping a lot of these larger organizations. During the pandemic, I had moved to a much smaller town, and I saw a lot of these small businesses that were really struggling. And for me, I found through coaching, I could help these small businesses. I wasn't limited to global conglomerates. I was able to, through coaching, help these mom and pop businesses really find out who they are, and help them grow and set up that legacy so that they could pass down that business to their children. And that to me is what really drives me to do what I do.
And that's a great answer because, that's what most coaches, or a lot of coaches like yourself, they come from a corporate world and they get into this situation where they do see something like that and they say, I've got to do something about it. And that's what you've done. You've inspired yourself to go forward. That's fantastic. So, and so in your experience, what's the hardest part about being a business coach? You mentioned the difference between consulting and coaching. What is your definition of the difference between consulting and coaching, Bradley, while we're on that spot?
Yeah, so for me, coach of consulting, I'll start with for
Yeah.
consulting, it's really having that solution.
Yes.
It's whether that's creating it or taking a client through a specified framework, and there's a lot more rigidity, I would say, in
Mm.
consulting.
Mm.
Whereas with coaching, there's a lot more flexibility, and it allows you as the coach to um, pull from various resources, anything that's at your disposal. And that could be as simple as having a conversation Or if you need to take them through a framework, it allows you to take them through that framework, but at the client's pace or a piecemeal. So it's a lot more flexible, and it allows, in the case of a small business owner, really to add that value as quickly as possible.
Yes, yeah, very important. So, what's the biggest challenge you face when starting your coaching business, and how did you overcome it?
So for just starting out a business,
Mm,
coaching is all about relationships, and relationships, they're built on trust. So
mm, mm,
if you try to sell coaching, you're gonna fail. Coaching, it's not something that can be sold. It's a service that can be offered for a rate. So most people will not seek a coach, but they're open to help in solving a challenge from someone who they know and trust. So at the end of the day, it boils down to relationships and
mm,
trust.
mhm. So, have you got any clients as yet, Bradley? Do you come across any clients or any prospects at this stage?
So right now I'm working with a pro bono client,
Mm.
and I have two potential clients that are looking to sign this week.
Okay. So, what would be the most important lesson that you've learnt from those prospects and clients at this early stage?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. What you've got you've got a prospect, you've got a pro bono client. So
Mhm.
obviously we learn lessons from our clients as we go through. So what would be the most important lesson that you've learnt from your client and these prospects at the moment? You're in early days.
Mm. Yeah, so the most important lesson that I learned from a client would be, um, hmm, I'm just taking through. There's a couple ones I want to hash this out in my head. Oh, here we go. So for so for me, working with one of the pro bono clients, uh, not everything goes to plan. So you can have a session where you're planning on talking about X, and they've read material on it. You've shared a lot of things that you're going to talk through about that session, basically really preparing for that. And then you walk in and you talk about, hey, how'd your week go? What are some wins? And with every client, I always have them start with their wins. And no matter what, there has to be a win. Even if I have to dig it out, there has to be a win. And in talking with them, all of a sudden they started talking about a lot of negatives. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about a win. They shared the win, and then I'm like, okay, now let's start talking about what you started talking about earlier and the problems that they started sharing. Um, it's one of those. I know we had this material planned and we were going to talk about growing in this item, but let's put a pin in that because I think that what you're talking about is very relevant, and we're not going to be able to solve this if we don't address this. So really, you have to be flexible. And just because you planned and prepared to discuss one thing with a client doesn't mean that you're going to do that. You'll get to it, but sometimes you have to be prepared for those curveballs.
Yeah. Now, before we started the podcast today, Bradley, we were talking about strong relationships. So, what strategies do you recommend for building and maintaining strong relationships with clients?
Yeah, great question, Peter. So with relationship building, it's one of those, you're never going to just meet somebody and then boom, you're instant friends.
Mm,
There are behavioral styles that are similar to that, but it still doesn't have that underlying trust. Um, it's going to take multiple conversations, and it's going to be multiple interactions. And through those interactions, you're slowly building that rapport. And once you have that rapport built, once you have that trust, that's when you can have those real honest conversations. Honesty with not only the coach, but honesty with the client themselves. Because sometimes you'll ask them, hey, how's business? And inevitably, business is great. I'm doing great. This is fine. And there are many times when it is not fine at all. But that's the facade that they have to put up. That's because that's their public image. They even, for some businesses where they have business partners, there could be a business partner that's pretty much handling all the day to day, and then another partner that they're doing other things. They're not always in the business, and the partner that's running the business, there could be some serious things that are happening, but they're not going to admit that because they don't want to admit failure, and they really need the help, but they're not going to ask for it.
So one last question, Bradley. It's been great today, but what advice do you give new coaches just starting their journey? They've decided that they're going to go down this path. They're going down the path. Instead of, sometimes they run off the path. What advice would you give them to keep on that path of getting to their clients and getting the best results from their activities in marketing and whatnot?
Yeah, so you have to be active. You should be doing something every day. Oftentimes, first starting off, you'll be doing things, but are they actually adding value? You're busy, but are you actually getting results from that activity? So it's very important to measure those activities, quantify it, and see what's actually happening in the business. Getting clients is a long-term thing. The funnel it has to be wide and tall, and you have to be doing activities that are constantly adding potential clients into the funnel, and that you are interacting with them with veracity. So for new coaches that are starting out, as fast as you can build those relationships, do it. There's a chance that you already have people that are in your network, and all you have to do is have that conversation. You do not sell to them. Again, you are not selling coaching. You're having a conversation. Whether that's updating them on, hey, I just started coaching. Just want to let you know that this is what's happening in my life, like what's happening in your life. And then, if you want to press it further, depending on what kind of person they are, asking them, hey, do you know somebody, do you know a small business owner, that matches your niche, or where you're trying to draw your clients from? You have to ask the question. And I know sometimes that can be uncomfortable, but if you don't ask, then you're never going to get it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Bradley. It was great meeting you and learning about your entrepreneurial journey. It's been quite comprehensive. You've been involved in very high exec, and you've woken up one day with an entrepreneurial explosion. I'm going to help the world of small business because they are the backbone of every country in the world, and I really appreciate your attitude on that. It's great to talk to you, and thanks again for coming to the podcast.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, so to everyone watching today, be it morning, good evening, good afternoon, or whatever, wherever you are in the world, I look forward to seeing you in our next episode. So stay tuned, and I'll see you on the other side.